What's up, everybody? This is Dan Thompson from RunAssociation.com, and this is your Rally Association podcast, the Midwest Regional Bracket Preview Edition. And this podcast is dedicated to everything going on in the Midwest region of the NCAA tournament, with their games starting on Thursday night. And in this podcast, we'll talk about all 16 teams in the region and who I think is going to make the Final Four. So this is the third podcast of the series of 4 of the bracket versions of the regionals, and then there'll be a 5th podcast coming with my Final Four and who I have winning the national championship on its own separate podcast as well too. So we talked about the East in one pod. We talked about the South. Let's talk about the Midwest. The Midwest in the bracket will end up with their games in Kansas City at the Sprint Center, going on for the winner of this bracket going to the Final Four. So there's an interesting group of teams in this bracket, and the top overall seed in this bracket and the third overall seed in the tournament is the North Carolina Tar Heels. Their road to the Final Four potentially could be real interesting, and I'll get to that in just a second. The Tar Heels are the top seeded team in the region. They finished here 27-6, lost a heartbreaking game in the ACC semifinals to Duke by 1 point, and won probably the best game of the college basketball season. But throughout the regular season, they did tie Virginia for the top seed team in the ACC. Only reason why Virginia was the number 1 seed in the ACC's tournament was the fact of they beat Carolina early in the season. If you look at the North Carolina resume this year, they beat Duke twice. They also beat Gonzaga. Carolina's one of the better offensive teams in the country because they push the pace at a higher rate than anybody else in the league, probably in the country. They're top 10 in both offense and defensive efficiency ratings in the entire country. And listen, Kobe Wright runs the point at a breakneck speed. Luke May is one of the better double-double threats on the floor, and Cameron Johnson has become one of the best shooters. Is not one of the best shooters in the entire country. A guy who shoots 50, 47, 80 from the field. We're talking about field, three-pointer, and free throw line. He is one of the best in the country at all 3 of those. With the exception of free throw line, but he still shoots 80%. Carolina also brings off a top 15 NBA lottery prospect in Nazir Little off the bench. Kenny Williams is probably one of the best and most underrated defensive players in the country. It's funny. For the job that if you watch Kenny Williams done all season long, he's not even an all-ACC defender. Ask RJ Barrett how good he is defensively, because in those matchups they played this season, RJ Barrett has struggled to be the RJ Barrett we've seen most this season. Now, Barrett has scored points in those games, but it hasn't been easy. North Carolina's main issue all year is the breakneck speed. Once we saw it at the same time, Carolina could be also complacent. We saw this in the conference semifinal game against Duke on last Friday night, where Carolina started settling for 3-point shots, trying to do something they're not going to do on a regular basis. Now, I know they have guys who can shoot the basketball. Kobe White is a streaky shooter who can knock them down when needed to. Johnson, like I mentioned before, is a 47% 3-point shooter. And Luke May has 3-point ability as well too. Kenny Williams can hit him from as well. But Carolina fell in love with the 3-pointer, especially when it wasn't going in. But if Kobe White gets to the rim and he makes plays at the rim, it's going to be a long day for anybody in the country, because Kobe White might be the fastest player in the country going end to end. I mean, he has a guy with big hair, but he's also a fun guy to watch. Carolina's first round opponent is Iona. EJ Crawford leads Iona for a team that has 17 wins and 15 losses. Crawford averages 17.9 points a game, and he's a guy that can score a lot. So Kenny Williams will be the guy that draws him in the opening round matchup. Now, Iona's on a 9-game winning streak. They're 17-15 on a 9-game winning streak. The good thing with Iona is that they shoot the 3-point ball very well. The bad part is they're going against a Tar Heels team that knows they shoot 3-point ball at a high rate. The one thing about Iona is that 40% of their shots are from out of the 3-point line. They're a solid 3-point shooting team, but they take 40% of their shots from the 3-point line. So North Carolina knows what to expect. They're going to jump the bridges early. And like I said, Crawford's going to have to be able to score almost 50 points in this game for Iona to even win this game. But give Iona a lot of credit. They got hot at the right time, and they won the MAC tournament, the MAAC tournament, not the MAC tournament, the MAC tournament. And you gave Iona a lot of credit. They're back in the tournament again this year. And like I said, they're going to be able to make this a good first half, especially if they start knocking down those shots early. Like I said, they shoot a lot of them. They have to hit a lot of them. 8-9 matchup in this bracket is Utah State and Washington. A game, when you watch these two teams, you look at these two teams on paper. Utah State was the regular season Mountain West and conference tournament champions. They won 28 games this year. Sam Morrell is a big scorer, 21 points a game for them. And what he does is he comes off and hits a lot of shots. And Utah State is a hot team. Since January 12th, they're 16-1 since January 12th. They earned this 8 seed, and they're a team, like I said, when you have the tournament, and we've watched in past history, when a guy catches fire in the tournament, especially leading scorer, it can carry them. AKA, if you want to know a good example, look at Kemba Walker's national championship run. They won the Big East and the national championship with a guy that was just literally just bombing away. You know, you've seen these moments where these guys can get deep in the tournaments because you have a big time scorer and a bunch around them. Sam Morril is a really, really huge scorer. Washington, they were the best team in the Pac-12 in the regular season. They got to the conference tournament final, did not close the business. They won 26 games this year, 26-8. Washington's a good team. And Jalen Novell, 16 points a game is really well. Malaisi Tabedi, if I pronounce his name right, is the Pac-12 Defensive Player of the Year, and will probably draw Sam Morril in the first round. As far as the guarding wise, he's been so good defensively that teams are really NBA teams are looking at potential this guy being at the end of the first round because he's just that good of a player. Defensively, he is a defensive terror. The one part about Washington that does kind of scare me is the fact of 25% of possessions for Washington have ended up in turnovers this year. They don't hold on to the basketball very well, even though they have one of the better defensive players in the country that can also cause turnovers. They turn the ball over a lot. 25% of possessions and turnovers does not sound good in the tournament, especially when you're going against a team that has won 16 of their last 17 games. I don't care who the opponent is. When you win that many games and you're going against a team that turns over the basketball, Utah State can be licking their chops. On the bottom part of the top part of the bracket, you have Auburn, who's the 5 seed, finished year 26-9. They won the SEC championship tournament, and they won in a dominant fashion over Tennessee. Jared Harper's one of the top players in the country. He's right. He 15 points and 5 assists a game, second team All SEC. He knows how to get it done. Auburn averages right around 80 points a game offensively. Bryce Brown, first team all 19 points in the championship game, scores right around 16 points a game. One thing about Auburn, they force a lot of turnovers. Ask Tennessee that same question. They force turnovers. And when they force turnovers, they make you pay for them on turnovers as well, too. They're playing New Mexico State, who won the regular season tournament out in the WAC conference, 30-4. The one thing about New Mexico State is they are a team full of balance, and guess what? More balance. They have 6 players that average over 7 points a game, and one player only averages over 11 points a game, and that's 11.1. And really, when you're a team full of balance, it does work itself out very well. New Mexico State's one of the best shooting teams from inside the three-point arc in the country. They hit right around 57% of their shots from inside the three-point line. The problem with New Mexico State is they take almost way more threes than they should. And when I say that, they take, I think almost 40% of their shots from the 3-point line. When you're shooting good from inside the paint and you're shooting a lot of threes, I'm not sure how that works, but hey, you got your 30 wins. But in this type of matchup, Auburn is going to pressure New Mexico State. And if they're causing turnovers, New Mexico State might have to start hitting those 3 points to keep this game interesting. 4th seed in the region is Kansas. They'll take on Northeastern. Kansas is 25-9, a team that was supposed to be one of the higher ranked teams in the country. Bill Self's team has gone through a lot of changes. LeGerald Vick has been gone for most of the last few weeks. The top 3-point shooter on the team was gone due to personal matters and probably will not be back for the rest of the season. They're led by Derek Lawson, who is an All-American, the transfer from Memphis at 19 points and 10.3 rebounds a game. Devon Dotson has been really solid, coming off, like I said, averaging 12 points and 3.6 assists a game. The real reason if Kansas can make a run of this tournament is if someone can find Quentin Grimes. I had Quentin Grimes, and a lot of people did in the beginning of the season as a potential top 10 pick. The freshman has struggled immensely to change to the college game to the point where we'll see him back in school next year. If he thinks he wants to play in the NBA next year, he needs to have a huge tournament. And why not be a better time of the present? Because if Kansas can get past the first 2 games and they get their hands on North Carolina, the game is in Kansas City. Like I said, this is not a good draw for North Carolina. If you have a potential Sweet 16 matchup with Kansas in Kansas City, you might as well call that a road game. Not sure how the committee even considered Kansas to even be in this region, but they put Kansas in a region where the regional semifinal is basically in their backyard. Scary. Let's talk about the bottom part of the bracket in this region. You have Kentucky, a team at 27-6, lost in the SEC semifinals to Tennessee. Kentucky and John Calipari, we've all talked about how great Calipari's recruiting classes have been. Really, it's been the guys who are not freshmen that have been great. And I'll get to the really, really solid freshman in a second. PJ Washington, the sophomore, has stepped his game up completely. Reed Travis, the transfer from Stanford. Stanford hasn't been the player that we thought we saw him at Stanford, but it's a completely different vibe. He wasn't the number one option, but PJ Washington, like I said, was an all SEC player this year. And Tyler Herron, a guy who was the SEC Newcomer of the Year, scoring over 14 points a game. Here's the thing with the SEC Newcomers of the Year. Kentucky's had 7 of the last 10 Newcomers of the Year. Every Kentucky Newcomer of the Year has been a first-round pick in the NBA draft. Think about that for a second. But guess what? The best player in Kentucky's team, I hadn't even mentioned. Now, Keldon Johnson is a potential top 10 pick. He averages right around 13.5 points a game. Kentucky is super athletic. And guess what? They're just a really good basketball team, and they're going to start peaking at the right time. I think the peaking time starts right about now. Kentucky will take on Aberdeen Christian. You know what? This is a great story. Aberdeen Christian, they've been in the NCAA, been in Division I for the last 6 years. They're coming over from the NIA. It's their first tournament run. Congratulations. 26-6. They won their conference championship tournament in the Southland. And guess what? They're drawing Kentucky. Welcome to the NCAA tournament. Don't remember, your checkout time is that the next morning at 12, because this will be a quick checkout time. Aberdeen Christian will be blown out of this game. Kentucky should dominate this game from start to finish. Now, look at Aberdeen Christian before we get to the next game. Aberdeen Christian is a pretty solid three-point shooting team, over 38% for the three-point line. They're also the top defensive team in the Southland Conference. It's great to be the top defensive team in the Southland Conference, but Kentucky's not in the Southland Conference. They're in the Southeastern Conference. This is a completely different upgrade. 26 wins does not equal the ability to beat Kentucky in the first round. Kentucky might make this the ugliest of the number 2 seed victories in the first round. But the 7-10 matchup is going to be fun. We're talking about Wofford and Seton Hall. Why is Wofford considered even being fun? Hey, guess what? Wofford won 29 games this year. They gave North Carolina everything they could early in the season in a game that North Carolina actually went to Spartanburg to play in Spartanburg against Wofford, and Wofford gave them everything that you possibly could handle in this game. Why is Wofford fun to watch? They average 83 points a game. They hit 14 threes a game. Both of them are in the top 10, and guess what? They hit 42% of their shots from deep. What's there more to watch? Well, Fletcher McGee is 2 3-pointers away from setting the all-time 3-point record in NCAA history. He should get that before the first TV timeout, probably. He's hit 502 3-pointers in his career. He averages over 20 points a game. He doesn't do much more than that. He is literally J.J. Redick walking. This guy knocks down shots on a regular basis from deep, and he is a scorer. On the other side, Seton Hall has a scorer as well, too. Seton Hall finished 20-13 in the Big East. They fell short of their goal by losing by 2 in the conference championship game to Villanova. If they would have won, they would have had a higher number than that 10. But don't worry. We get Miles Powell against Fletcher McGee. Sign me up. Miles Powell, 22.5 points a game. He does get buckets. It's the thing with Villanova is that they struggle they've been a team that's been kind of Jekyll and Hyde all year. They caught fire towards the end of the Big 12, the Big East season. That's how they made that run. They just been struggling with inconsistencies all year. It's been up and down. But when I say this to me is one of the more exciting matchups in the tournament, it is, especially when it comes to players. Not the most exciting matchup because that's going to be in the final podcast, and I'll get into that one in the West podcast. But I'm telling you, when you look at this matchup, it's going to be a game. And Seton Hall doesn't score as much as Wofford does. But just to watch individual matchups, Miles Powell and Fletcher McGee, they're going to put up points in this game. The scoreboard operator better be ready for this one. I love this game, especially when it just comes for entertainment value. Now, if you look at the other part of the bracket, the 3-14 matchup, this is the matchup that people think that this three could go down. It's funny when a team wins 31 games and proceed to be the team that might be the most likely to lose of the three seasons, and that is Houston. Houston's 31-3 this year. They're they're the American Conference Championship, regular season championship, fell in the conference championship game to Cincinnati where they got dominated. Houston really has had a very, very good season this year. All their losses have been the tournament teams. They've lost to Temple. They lost three solid teams. Lost to Temple, lost to UCF, they lost to Cincinnati. Houston knows how to win games. They really do. Corey Davis is the leader in the backcourt. And this Houston team has already they beat LSU earlier in the season. They beat Oregon when they had Bowl. So if you look at those wins, they beat some very, very quality teams. But why is a good part of the country think that Houston can lose in the opening round? Why? Because Georgia State is a very, very good basketball team. Georgia State won the Sun Belt Conference regular season and the tournament champions. They're 24-9, their second consecutive year in the tournament. Ron Hunter's teams have won in the NCAA tournament before. You remember Ron Hunter's team won that first round matchup where he's on a scooter, and his kid, who was RJ Hunter, that played for the Boston Celtics, was leading that team. Mr. Simmons down there, DeMarcus Simmons, is one of the best scorers in the country. He was the reason why they got to the tournament last year. If you watched their conference championship game last year, he dominated the conference championship game, and they won this year with him only scoring 10 points. This is Jordan in the row. Some team is going to lose. It seems like every year one of the higher seeded teams loses. This could be the one that we're talking about here. Georgia State could put Houston in a lot of trouble, especially if Georgia State starts knocking down shots because they hit 39% from deep. Let Georgia State start bombing threes in this game, and especially if DeMarcus Simmons can get going early, Houston's going to have a time in their hands. You know, Corey Davis is averaging almost 17 points a game to lead Houston. And the final matchup in this bracket is the 6-11 matchup, which is Iowa State and Ohio State. Well, some team with a state's going to win this game. The question is, which one is it going to be? You're looking at Iowa State as 23-11. They won the Big 12 championship tournament after having a solid season in the Big 12. They have a bunch of guys that are they're just difference makers. Lindell Wigginton, the kid from Canada, averaging 13 points and 4 assists a game. Marcel Shyok, yes, he won the Big 12 tournament MVP. And if you don't remember him, he played at UVA. He's averaging almost 19 points a game. He is a guy that is a game-changing guy for Iowa State. The one thing about Iowa State is that Iowa State has been up and down, but if you watch that championship game against Kansas, they dominated Kansas the entire game. Iowa State is a team full of transfers and a bunch of guys that really just want to win. Like I said, Shiok is a really, really underrated player. And like I said, he looks like a far different player than when he was at UVA. Going against Ohio State, a team at 19-14, and really, Ohio State, they're not exactly the strongest team in this tournament. They don't shoot the ball very well from deep. Nobody shoots over 39% on this roster from the three-point line. And they're a different team. Ohio State's a different team depending on what kind of lineup you get. If you go back and look at Ohio State throughout the entire season, one thing about Ohio State is that the injury bug has not come at the right time. Caleb Weston was suspended. And he was back for the conference championship. They won the huge game that matters, but Caleb Weston changes everything. He's right around 14 points and 6.8 rebounds a game. If he's in the game, if he's actually playing effectively, Ohio State's actually solid. Now, this is not the same team to beat Cincinnati early in the season. This is just an up and down Jekyll and Hyde type team going against Iowa State. I don't like this matchup for the Buckeyes in this one. I really don't. So let's get to the picks. Who I got in this region. Let's start at the very top. Iona has no chance against North Carolina. I don't even see this game being more than Carolina should have this game in control by the time we get midway through the first half. Carolina should dominate Iona in the first round. I guess Iona won 9 straight games in a row. They take a lot of three-pointers. North Carolina should be able to stop this early and get out in transition and basically just pound Iona all throughout the floor. 8-9 matchup, Utah State-Washington. Like I said, Utah State is a team that has won 16 of the last 17 games, going against a Washington team that should have won the Pac-12 tournament, fell short. Washington turns the ball over a lot. Utah State is a team that's very opportunistic. Sam Merrill versus Maurice Tibet is going to be one of the best matchups in the tournament because of the fact that it's big time scorer against big time defender. From big time scorer from a small school going against power conference defensive player who is a potential first round pick because of the fact that he's very good defensively. Give me Washington in this game. Don't know why I like Washington. It seems like I just think that they're going to shut down Morrell. But Morrell, if he gets hot, Utah State starts hitting threes. This could be a win for Utah State, but I'm taking Washington in this one. North Carolina, Washington in round 2. Yes, Washington has scores. Like I said, Jared Noel will be taken out by Kenny Williams. And like I said, I think Maurice will be guarding basically most of the game Kobe White because of Kobe White's quickness. I like Luke May in this game to basically really just get in, have a big-time double-double. Cam Johnson, enough shots. Carolina's in the Sweet 16. Easy. Look at the bottom part of the Carolina side of the bracket. Kansas against Northeastern. Well, listen, Kansas is motivated. Derek Lawson is way better than anything in the Northeastern interior. Northeastern was 23-10 this year. They've won 7 games in a row. Don't think Northeastern can do much with Derek Lawson in the paint. I like Kansas getting out of the first round. Auburn, New Mexico State. Like I said, New Mexico State is a very, very good team. They just drew the wrong team. Auburn will pressure, cause turnovers. Harper and Brown will make enough shots. They're going to get past it. They're going to score a lot of points in this game, especially against a team like New Mexico that does not score the ball very well, even though they're very balanced. Give me Auburn. So you're looking at Auburn, Kansas in the second round. A very, very good game for both teams. It's just a matchup of how they're going to do it. The difference in this game is Auburn is not very deep on the front line. So if China Okoye gets in foul trouble, it's going to be a long day for Auburn because Lawson is a load in the middle. I like Kansas to get to the Sweet 16 in this one, only because of the fact of they're going to pound the ball inside early. If they can get the Auburn bigs in foul trouble, it's going to be a long day for Auburn in the interior, even though Auburn does like to push the pace and score a lot of points. Bottom part of the bracket in the Midwest, look at the number 2 seed, which is the Kentucky Wildcats against Aberdeen Christian. Like I said, this game is going to be more of a walkthrough for Kentucky just to get themselves ready for the second round. I think in the second round, they'll take on Wofford. They'll take on Wofford in the second round. Listen, I know Seton Hall got hot at the right time in the tournament, but inconsistencies against a team that shoots a 3-point ball and not just shoots 3-point ball, shoots 3-point ball at a high rate and a high percentage of shots going in. I know a lot of people in the Big East are going to look at me real silly. I like Wofford to get their 30th win of the season. Fletcher McGee sets that NCAA all-time 3-point record before the first TV timeout. He shot an easy minute through the first half, but I think he might get it within the first 2 or 3 minutes of the game just to get this out the way. I like Wofford getting the second round. Now, Wofford do the same to Kentucky as they did to North Carolina. I think they make this a game, but Kentucky's got too many athletes. Kentucky's just too deep. Give me the Wildcats in the Sweet 16. Other part of the bracket, Georgia State and Houston. Listen, I know this is the trendy pick is Georgia State. I like Houston in this game because I think Georgia State, I'm not sure there's going to be a second scorer outside of Simmons to try to keep up with Houston's pace. I like Houston. Like I said, they have not lost to very many teams that are very bad. Give me Houston, even though Georgia State is the trendy pick in this region. Ohio State and Iowa State, listen, I mentioned it before, Ohio State is just, there's something about Ohio State I don't like, and there's something about Iowa State I do. Give me Iowa State in this game. I think the transfer for Iowa State get it done over Ohio State. So now you're looking at Iowa State and Houston in the second round. A very, very good matchup, a 3-6 matchup, which is always supposed to be good. Houston is trying to put the AAC on the map. I think Houston does it. Iowa State will make this a game, but consistency always wins, and Houston knows how to win games when they're supposed to. Like I said, when you beat teams like LSU, you beat teams like Oregon, and they also beat Utah State in this tournament as well, who's also Utah State at 28-6. They have beaten 3 very, very quality teams in the tournament. Plus, on top of the fact that they're really good in the AAC this year, give me Houston to get to the Sweet 16. So, we're talking Sweet 16 matchups. North Carolina taking on Kansas. It's actually kind of chalk, it sounds like, North Carolina, Kansas. And then you have Houston and Kentucky. Listen, Carolina and Kansas, this is not a fair game because, like I said before, this game is in Kansas City. Kansas will have the entire crowd with them, but North Carolina's the better team. I like Roy Williams to outcoach Bill Self in this one. Give me Carolina to go to the 8. Other matchup, you have Kentucky and Houston. This will be a very interesting game of football, but this is going to be an even better game of basketball. Kentucky is full of athletes. We'll get the rematch that we've all been waiting for earlier this season. North Carolina will take on Kentucky in the regional final. I think this is one of the few brackets I think are a few chances you're going to have to see chalk go across the board between 1 and 2. It's going to be a very, very good matchup between Duke and Carolina and Kentucky. Remember, they played early in the season in Rupp Arena. Kentucky won that game 80-72. Carolina was a completely different team at that point in the season. Carolina was still trying to find themselves. I think Carolina at the time was they were 8-2. They were still trying to figure things out. They had just beat Gonzaga at a huge game at home, and they just could not get it done in Chicago that day. So after that game, Carolina somehow snuck it into high gear. They've lost, literally before the Duke game, they had lost 2 games since that game, and they're a completely different team. I like Carolina with all the changes. Carolina's going to get to the Final Four in this situation. Kobe White and company. The guy we want to watch in this game is where they're going to. Guy watch me Kenny Williams because he should be guarding Keldon Johnson or Tyler Herron throughout the entire game because of the fact that he's been so good defensively. Give me Carolina in the Final Four in a close game over Kentucky to get down to Minneapolis. So 3 podcasts down, 1 to go. Like I said, I picked North Carolina to go to the Final Four. So let's talk about guys that you might want to watch in the tournament if you're actually watching the games individually or if they get past each round. Which guys are the ones you need to keep an eye on? Like I said once before, Sam Merrill of Utah State is a scoring machine. This bracket has a lot of scoring machines in here. Sam Merrill is winning 21 points a game. He is going to get plenty of looks against Washington's defense. And that matchup, like I said, with Tariq of Washington is going to be a matchup to watch because he's such a good defender. Other guys you want to watch, like I mentioned before, in that 7-10 matchup, Fletcher McGee of Wofford and Miles Powell of Seton Hall. Both these guys are going to fill it up completely. They just do it in different ways. Fletcher McGee is going to be shooting from the 3-point line, coming off screens. It's going to be like watching J.J. Redick all over again. If you remember him from college, he is that type of shooter. And Miles Powell is a guy that can do it from all different ranges of the floor. So it's going to be a very, very good matchup to watch those two guys going back and forth, scoring the basketball. And the other guy you want to watch will be, like I said, Caleb Weston of Ohio State. If he has a big game, Ohio State can actually get past round 1. He's right around 15 points and 14.4 and 6-point rebounds a game. He is the best interior player Ohio State has. If he gets to a double-double, hey, Ohio State can really have a real big shot at this. Also, DeMarcus Simmons of Georgia State is a scoring machine. The guy can score the basketball. He struggled his last couple of games, but I like him, and I like for him to do something big in the tournament. So that's my thoughts, and those are my picks on who I have in the tournament. The question now is, can you outpick me? There's a contest going on for RallyAssociation.com where you have to basically outpick me, and the winner of the tournament, not just say outpick me, but outpick everybody else involved in the tournament, will win a gift card. Like I said, it's easy to enter, easy to win. The question is, can you outpick me? I don't think you can. Follow me on Twitter at Danny, DANNY, 3 Thompson, on Twitter. Follow Rally Association page on Facebook. Also follow the Rally Association website, where it's going to be basically articles on there from the NBA as well as college basketball's March Madness. So now we got 3 regions down and 1 more to go. My question is, am I right? Am I wrong? I want to hear your opinions below. Check us out later on. We still have 1 more podcast to go, and that's the West Region. We'll talk to you later for Rally Association. Peace.